midst of Native American Heritage Month, it is my honor to introduce our current community curator, Cyndy Milda. Cyndy is a Medewa Kantawa Dakotawea and an Ojibwe Kwe from Shakopee Medewa Kantawa Sioux community. Cyndy comes from a family of talented and knowledgeable makers, and this talent and knowledge can be seen in the work of her children and her grandchildren, and that's always really, really good to see. I have a deep respect and love for this family, so I'm very glad that they're all here. In her case in the lobby, the museum has commissioned the Detalium necklace and earring set, so it will live in our permanent collection here at the museum. It will be used to teach community members as they come in to visit, and we will do our very best to take care of it. So, without further ado, Miss Cyndy Milda.
So Matakiapi, Shantewa Shtena Chizbi, Dakota Ia, Pishuti Yuha Maniwi, oh gosh, I cut off a lot of what I was gonna say as my introduction. But the late Amos and Rose Crooks, Tioshpe, Shakpe, Medewa Kantawan Sioux community, Hewatahan. So what I said in Dakota was, hello my relatives. My Dakota name is Wachswood Medicine Woman. My English name is Cyndy Milda. And I come from the late Amos and Rose Crooks family, and my home is the Shakopee Midwalkton Sioux community. I just want to say thank you to the Science Museum and to Pejuta for giving me this opportunity. I don't want to say like a big time artist, but as you look upstairs in the case, as I looked at it, it's like, holy cow, I did that. I couldn't believe it. I mean, really, when you see your stuff in a different lighting than just at home, like it puts on a whole new perspective. And so, a little bit just about me is I've been beading for, I don't know, a long, long time. I've been creating for a long, long time as well. I learned how to sew from my grandma and grandpa. I learned how to, or from my grandma, I should say. I learned how to bead from my grandma, and I'll get into that as we go along. But I kind of have a little, like, notes so I don't steer off, because I like to go on and on and on, and sometimes I like to ramble and all of that, and so that's just part of, I guess, storytelling in a way, is we just kind of go off into other directions, and so I hope that I can keep you all in tune with what I'm trying to come across and the pieces that I'm trying to come across and everything like that. So yeah, my name is Cyndy Milda. I'm the community curator. So this is my great-grandparents, the late George Sr. and Alice Crooks. I did not know much about them. This is the only picture that our families had on their walls, was this any of my late ancestors and stuff like that. And you know, one thing that I wanted to put on or to bring up was their regalia and how they're dressed and everything like that. But also, kind of in this time is like my great-grandmother's headband. You know, she has, as people now call it, the swastika symbol. It wasn't always that. It meant for us as Native people and Indigenous people, it was friendship. Right? Sometimes I forget, and so, you know, it just meant like peace and friendship and things like that. So it didn't have like a really bad connotation with it. And so I want to bring that up. Like, that was something that on my German side, because I am half German as well, my dad is 100% German. He's either second or third generation over here in the US. I think he's second, honestly. But I just want to bring that up because, it's something that if you look back into old pictures, like you'll see that beadwork a lot and that symbol a lot in that. And so I just wanted to bring that up as saying that was something peaceful to us. That wasn't something negative to us. And we have to look at how our ancestors used that, those symbols and stuff like that. And so I just want to say that much about my grandparents. I didn't know a lot about my great-grandparents. I didn't know a lot about them. A lot wasn't told to me about them. And so I know a lot of the younger ones in here are my grandchildren, but I want to tell you guys, I'm going to get emotional while I talk all about this, because it's these teachings that remind us of our ancestors and along the way and who we are as Indigenous people. And so, as grandchildren, ask your grandparents all the questions that you can while they're alive, because I didn't ask enough questions. I wish I would have asked more. And you don't realize that until you're my age. And I'll tell you how old I am. I'm 58 years old. I'm not shy about saying how old I am, because it's the life that I have lived and the different changes in life that I have seen. And so that's why I tell how old I am. But that's one lesson that I want to teach the younger generations is talk to your grandparents, talk to your parents, and learn as much information as you can about your family, because you don't know it until it's too late, and you don't know, I hardly know anything about my great-grandparents, and I wish I had known more, and so that's just one thing about George and Alice that I wanted to share with everyone. But here's my grandparents. This is, when I say the late Amos and Rose Crooks, this is my grandparents. They were huge. They were very impactful in my life. My grandma taught me how to bead, and she also taught me how to sew. She also taught me how to cook, and she also taught me how to be a good relative, and same as my grandfather. But also my grandma gave me the spitfire and the the will to fight back and stuff like that, and also ask questions, and don't be shy to ask questions, and don't put up with the mediocrity of just everyday life. Make sure you ask those questions. And so I get a lot of my will and a lot of my fight from my grandma, because she was strong and she would fight anybody. There's stories I could tell you that she fought Amos's brother Norman. She would go and fight him all the time, and it didn't matter if he was a man or not. She would just go and fight him, physically fight. So it was, it's my grandma and grandpa that I get a lot of these teachings from. But one thing about their regalia that they're wearing is my Uncle Glenn, and you'll see in the next next photo is Glenn, but my Uncle Glenn beaded that whole outfit, beaded all her accessories. My other uncle, Raymond, or as a lot of people call him, Sonny, he made the dress for my grandma. So I come from a long line of crafters and artisans and things like that, because we all did everything. Everybody did everything. My grandpa, he would go and make all of his own stuff. He learned how to do it in the 70s. In the 70s, living on the reservation in Shakopee, it was all gravel roads. We didn't have a lot back then. We were living off of commodities and everything like that. And so my grandma and grandpa, they started the first powwows. The first powwows were right in their front yard. They would come and they would host a whole bunch of people, and my grandma would be cooking all night and all day and the next day and taking care of everybody that was at their house that would come in for the powwows. Grandpa, he would be preparing everything for the arena to be on and everything like that, and so he would get it all ready, and he'd make out benches out of tree stumps and the wood that he had and everything like that. And so to me, those were my most memorable days, were the 70s and early 80s, before gaming and stuff like that, because at that time we were not only a really close family, but also that is when we brought in the other Dakota communities and said, hey, come, we're all relatives, like come to our house and we're having a powwow. And so all of our relatives, we knew who they were from Prairie Island and Lower Sioux and Upper Sioux. We knew who they were. And we got to meet our relatives and our little cousins and grandma and grandpa. They'd be saying, don't get with that boy, that's your cousin. And so they'd always be telling us, you know, our family lineage and who we were related to and things like that, because that's important to know as Native people, because, you know, there's not a lot of us out there, and we're all related to each other some way, shape, or form. You know, and a lot of things what my grandma would say is, well, what she wouldn't say too, is that she was Ojibwe. She was a Anishinaabe. Back then, you know, it was really shameful to be Dakota and Ojibwe. You know, it wasn't something cool to be, and so she would always be really, really shy about that. And you'd like kind of tease her and say, "You're Ojibwe, what about that?" And she's like, "No, I'm not. Don't you ever mention that again." And so it was always something really fun that I would just hear a lot of teasing about that. About my grandma. But my grandfather, he was the first vice chairman of Shakopee Sioux community. So next week, when everybody's celebrating Thanksgiving, and I said that for a very reason, because I don't say the other word, that is actually the date that Shakopee was recognized as a federal tribe. So November 28th, 1969. So we will be 55 years old next week. And that's for a very specific reason. And I can go into that whole history too and everything like that, because I was 3 years old when our tribe was actually federally recognized. But a lot of other things, you know, my grandfather and grandmother, they raised me. They were the ones to raise me. My mom and dad at the time lived in Eden Valley, Painesville area, and because my dad was German and both his mom and dad were 100% German, we would travel back and forth. So I was born in Shakopee, but yet we traveled back and forth and everything like that to Eden Valley, Painesville area, and that's like 2 hours away from Shakopee. We'd go once a month. I would remember we'd go once a month and we'd visit my grandma and grandpa on that side. And I don't have a picture of them too much, because I went into my native side than my German side. And I know equal about both sides, because there's a town named after, so my dad was Terrence Stady, Sr., and there's a town in Germany that's named after Stad. So down southern United States, our last name is pronounced Stad. Up here in the northern part of the States, we're pronounced Stady. So there is a town in Germany that is called Stad. So I do know a little bit about that, but when we would come and visit and everything like that, I would always cry to Grandma and Grandpa Crooks. I would always cry to them, like, I don't want to leave, I don't want to leave. Just cry. And they would get tired of it, and my mom and dad would get tired of it. So I would just stay with my grandma and grandpa all the time. And so when I was really, really little, before kindergarten even started, this is who raised me, really. But I said all of that, but these two were very instrumental in the Makato powwow and the Makato Association, so Mankato, the Mankato powwow and the Mankato Association. So it was always Amos and Amos. And the reason I say that is because Amos Crooks and Amos Owens from Prairie Island, they were always the best of friends. They the Owens always came up here to Shakopee. Our family would always go down to Prairie Island, and they would share stories and everything like that, and also share teachings and things like that. If people don't know, Amos Owens, he was medicine man, so to speak. But yeah, so they just got in together, and because they were Amos and Amos, they were the odd ones. Like, they were best friends because their names were Amoses, because there weren't too many Amoses around Minnesota at that time. And so they were really good friends. They started the Mankato. It was a lot of people that started the Mankato Association for the powwow and things like that. But I just want to throw that out there because a lot of people don't know that about my grandma and grandpa, or they do, and I don't know, they always seem to be, I don't want to say forgotten, but sometimes they're forgotten in that way, in that realm. But that's who I remember starting the Mankato Association, along with like Bud Lawrence and Arlo Hossie was down there. I mean, I know a lot of good dancers back then. Arlo Hossie was a non-native person. If you've been ever out to Hochakatiti, that's who Shakopee bought their collections from, was Arlo Hossie. And Arlo was a general contractor who would purchase, he wouldn't purchase, he would trade. He would go to the reservations and say, my grandma and grandpa needed a washer and dryer. And they didn't have the money to purchase that washer and dryer at that time. So what they would do is they would trade him something. So if they had a pair of moccasins, they would trade him that pair of moccasins for the work that he did on getting them a washer and dryer. And so that's how Shakopee, SMSC got their collection at Hochakatiti. He was just a general contractor who went across the country and did a lot of work for Native people. And that's how we purchased his collection. But also like Porky White, I remember Porky White way a long time ago, he was Ojibwe, but he was really good friends with my grandma and grandpa. And you know, a lot of times back then, it's like, why are you hanging out with that Ojibwe? You know, like, it was always like a constant fight, but it was always like a constant game, you know, and teasing back and forth. And so they would always say that, and it was just always fun. And then the late George Squircoat and a lot of different people who were really instrumental, and old-timers that were really instrumental in my life, and who I have really fond memories of, and things like that. So my uncle, my uncle passed away 6 years ago, unexpectedly. But he had a huge impact on my life. He was more, and you can see up there, I have brother/uncle, because he was more like my brother. He was 16 years older than I was. And since my grandma and grandpa pretty much raised me, I lived with Glenn for a lot of years. But also during that time growing up and becoming an adult and everything like that, I got my driver's license before he got his driver's license, and things like that. It was just, you know, kind of fun. Glenn was amazing. He had the biggest heart anybody could ever have. He gave to a lot of different people. He met a lot of different people. He was the face of our community of SMSC, as a lot of people would say, because he always wore this outfit, his regalia. He always wore that to past presidents' funerals. He would always go to DC and wear outfits like that. But he presented many, many times different pipes that were made by my grandfather. He would present them to dignitaries and stuff like that. And so there is one at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. There is one in their display case that they have. I think it's still there. I don't know. I haven't been there for many, many years. But I was there with Glenn when he did that, and we took along the Sisseton-Wapton Vietnam vets, the Kit Fox Society is what they're called right now. And so we did that, and Art Owens came and went with us to sing some songs and stuff like that. And so that was really impactful and something that Glenn always did. So my grandfather, the previous picture, he was a pipe maker. And also in that pipe making, he was also a jewelry maker. So he would make jewelry and beads out of pipestone. And I have one piece that was given to me before Glenn passed away that my grandfather made. And I have a picture to go with it. When my grandfather finished it, and he gave it to my grandma, that it's a picture of him and her, and she's wearing it. And so it's really, really cool to have that piece, but also to see how he did those beads. And so, it's really cool to see, but also the fact that some of these arts are being lost and that we need to gain them back has been really, really incredible. And so that's one thing that we keep on going, and he's part of my inspiration on keeping that going, and keeping that art going, and keeping, who we are as going and things like that. And so Glenn was many things to SMSC. I mean, he was a former chairman, he was a former secretary treasurer, he was a former vice chairman as well. And so because he also served in the Navy, and he was a secretary on his captain's ship. And so his captain lived in Deadwood, South Dakota, because I had to take Glenn to go and see him at one time. So before they both passed away, it was like, let me go see my captain. And so don't ask me what ship, because I don't know, I don't remember. I have all the records at home, but I just don't remember. But he had fun doing that, but he came home to the community, came home to the reservation, because he wanted to serve his community at that point too. So he came back and started serving his community. And so in that, a lot of people always called my grandma and grandpa, they always called them my mom and dad. Even still to this day, I have some of the elders calling my grandma and grandpa my mom and dad. How are you, I remember when your mom and dad would bring you here or bring you there. And then they would always call Glenn my brother at that time, because I was always with him. I always took him, we were always everywhere together. And so that's why they did that. Up in the display is this wrestling belt. And so I could not have done this, and I'm gonna acknowledge two people. Edsel, if you'd stand up, please. Edsel did if you're looking at it, Edsel did the right part. And then David, my son, he did the left part. So this is 3 generations of beading on this belt. And so this inspiration, David designed it, he asked me to bead it, and so I beaded the whole big main part. So the inspiration was my grandma and grandpa. And every single time we would go down and watch my grandma or go and visit my grandma and grandpa, my grandma would have wrestling on. She loved wrestling. And so she would have it on, she would be beading, she would teach us how to bead and different things like that. And we'd just go and visit her with her and bead at the same time and just enjoy each other's company. And so that was one of the memories. But a lot of it too is how it was like, to me, is like the monarch butterfly. My grandfather was a gardener, he loved the butterflies. And if you noticed on his regalia, he had that big butterfly in the middle of his, he always wore that. Everybody knew Grandpa Amos by that butterfly. He was the only one that ever had that on any of his regalia. So some of the other flowers are flowers also that were kind of favorites of theirs and things like that, that I remember anyways. The hummingbirds were, my grandpa loved hummingbirds, and he would have a hummingbird feeder. He would have a couple hummingbird feeders everywhere, and they would come and see, always come and visit. And I would always say, like, why do you have those? Like, up north, to me, it was like, I never saw them, you know? And so it was kind of odd. But then they owned a house down in Arizona, and you could always see the hummingbirds down in Arizona, and they would always have them down in Arizona. And so one thing that's really, I don't know if it's coincidence or not or whatever, but they had a house in Casa Grande, Arizona. Casa Grande is connected or part of the Gila River Indian Reservation. And that's where my husband, Richard, is enrolled at and from. And so it's kind of, I don't want to say coincidence, but kind of is that, you know, we're together, and, you know, it's, at that time I didn't know that, you know, he was from down there, and, you know, it's, my grandma and grandpa were down there too as well. And so there's just a lot of different things about the wrestling belt and how it came to be and how it was and how we got it. And this is the first major big project that I did, for a long time, for a really long time. Because the last time I did anything was when my daughters were little. And that's one of my daughters over there with the little baby, Carissa. Baby Birdie, but Carissa's my daughter. And I would be their outfits, always their dance outfits. Always beating them and stuff like that when they were little. So it had taken many, many years in between that. I started this during when the pandemic started, was working with it off and on, and then my son's like, hurry up and get that done. And so I think I finished it 3 years ago. And so this is the first time that it's been out for public display. Before that, it was kind of put away, and it was taken to some wrestling events and things like that. WrestleMania, it was at WrestleMania, been at a couple of WrestleManias, so different events and stuff like that. It's been, we're carrying on the tradition of watching wrestling still to this day, that my grandma and grandpa did. Every Monday and Friday, I'm watching wrestling anyways, and turning it, flipping it between football and everything else, while I'm beating, you know, and still doing that. And so this belt is really, really more sentimental than anything else. I did have a museum come up to us and say they want to buy it, and it's like, no, because this one is really sentimental. And so that if you can see where, I'll go over here. So where this, my Dakota name is Pejitiuhamaniwi, that is Velcroed on. So we can take it and off and put up whoever's the champion for that week or that month. We can continue to do that all the time. And so we haven't gotten to it yet because we're all busy with our lives. But we're gonna put each of our Dakota names in there and then switch it out and put my grandma's and my grandpa's and things like that. And just have it around and just, yeah, it's more sentimental than anything. It's also kind of fun when you bring it to other places and people are like, oh, that's really, really cool. And we're like, oh, thank you, because that was a lot of hard work, you know, that we put into it. And so it's just fun to have and fun to do and something different. And so bringing, kind of the contemporary in to something that's been a long time, an old tradition. You're seeing more of that, but I've never seen anything on this level. And so it's just kind of fun to do those kinds of things. It was a fun project, but it was also kind of a frustrating project as well too, because it was my first time in a long time, and things that you use to bead on, not, they've changed since when how we used to bead and stuff like that. So they changed from when my children were smaller to nowadays. And so it's just doing that adjusting too, because you can't find many diaper pads anymore. And that's how we used to do in the old days, was diaper pads, and now they have like plastic in them and everything like that. Well, the old days, they were cloth. They were 100% cloth. And so having not that plastic in, because I didn't want any of that plastic in. I wanted to keep it kind of natural as possible as I could. Even though some things aren't always natural, you try to make it as much as possible. And here is the next piece up there is the wrestling medallion. So I learned how to quill. I'm going to give another shout out to my Hunka. So Hunka is adopted, so I took her as my Hunka daughter, Shauna Elk. I learned how to quill from her a couple years ago, and my inspiration was this. At first I did just the W, and then I beaded all the way around the W format medallion just for me. That was so I could get it done for WrestleMania, because I went to WrestleMania. My son and grandson took me to WrestleMania this year. And so this one came after WrestleMania, and he's like, you should kind of do this and kind of do that. And so I kind of went off on a whole, we kind of matched up David's idea, but did it in a whole different way and stuff like that. And so this is all 100% porcupine quilled. My first big project that I ever did. And this one I gifted to David as just something that I do. I usually gift a lot of my work and everything like that. And so this is something that I gave to him. Just having that thanks of taking me to places that probably would have never seen if it wasn't for him. And so that's where that comes from. And then, like Pejita said, the Dentillium necklace and earring set that the Science Museum purchased. So Dentillium goes back a long, long ways. And part of this is they're tusk shells, kind of like a seashell in a way. And how it was told to me is they were found back then when we did the trading and stuff, our ancestors, they were traded with the French. And so they wash up on the coast of France. Don't ask me which side, because I forget. I think it's like, I want to say like St. John's or Saint something that they wash up along. And every morning they go out and they pick them just from the sand. And so our ancestors would trade the Dentillium back and forth for other goods. We would trade, for whatever goods that we could get on. And so you'll see a lot of old-time pictures of women wearing a lot of Dentillium. And so that's where this inspiration came from, is kind of getting back to the old. And so I kind of have done my creations backwards. And a lot of people say, oh, you're that way. And I'm like, no, I'm not. I don't want to be. But my creations, have kind of been backwards in a way, so to speak, because the way it should be, in my mind, it should be the quilling comes first and everything like that, and then the beading, and then the shells and stuff like that. So I kind of have done it all backwards in a way and stuff like that. But working with Dentillium, and I should say working with all of these, it's a process. It's not easy. Beads are somewhat kind of easy because you have the colors there and you know what you're going to work with, and they're all there for you. You don't have to do much work other than pick colors and stuff like that. But with quill work, down here in Minneapolis or suburbs, Shakopee, where I live, we don't have porcupine. I don't see porcupine anyways. I haven't seen any in all of my 58 years of life in Shakopee. And so how I purchased them from online, just regular white porcupine quills, and then I dye them myself. Clean them, and then dye them. So it's a process. You have, once you get alive, and I only know because Shauna tells me, or shows us the videos of plucking the porcupines and hearing the stories her daughters, tell about the porcupine and the roadkill and all of that, and people calling her and saying, hey, there's a porcupine at this mile marker, go and get it, or whatever, and they go and get it, and then plucking all the hair and the quills from it, it's a process. And so it's not taken for lightly, and it's something that, is not easy at all. And so you're dealing with a dead animal, a dead carcass, and you have to smell that, and you're plucking all of these, and it's not fun to do. And then the next process is cleaning, and it takes a lot of time to clean the porcupine quills. And then after the cleaning, then you dye them, whatever colors you want to dye. Back in the old days, and I shouldn't say old days, because now some people are using them more and more, the natural dyes, using more natural dyes. And where do you get those and stuff like that? Well, you can get them from our earth. Mother Earth, Michimacaw, provides a lot of resources and natural resources that we can use. And so we still use some of those today. But some of us, we go the cheaper way too, and use RIT dye and everything like that, and use other dyes, whatever they have out there, you try, Kool-Aid, whatever will dye a quill, you try it. And so, so then that's a process. And then they have to dry and everything like that, and you have to use them, and then you pick, and you go through and pick which ones you want to use, because not all of them are suitable for what you want to use. And so you just go through and pick and choose and diligent about that. And then with Dentilium, so Dentilium is a process as well. Dentilium, you go and you pick it off and you get it, and now you can get it. For a long time, it was really hard to get. During the pandemic, and it just became available for the last 2 years. Off the coast of India is where they're finding a lot of it right now. And so you find those different ways that you can get it. They also have it off the coast of the west coast, from up into Canada and Alaska down to Oregon. You can find it along that coast. You can also find it along the east coast as well. But it's a lot shorter here, and you don't want to over harvest it, and that's the thing, and that's one of the things that we don't try to do, is over harvest it, and we shouldn't, because we should only take as much as we can use for that year, for that calendar year. And so with Dentilium, you have to get it nice and even, you gotta sand it, and so I'm out there on my porch in my deck and sanding all the time. But with Dentilium and any shell, you have to be careful because of the shell particles coming up into your lungs. So it can cause a very rare cancer. And so with Dentilium, you have to wear a mask. And so I wear a mask like they do nail salons or construction workers or stuff like that. So I wear that mask. And always outside, I'm always doing it outside because I don't want the remnants to stay inside the house and for my house to get all those particles and stuff like that. So you should, you don't have to, you can do it anywhere, but you should work with Dentilium while it's outside. So in Minnesota, we know that, our favorite time of the year is during the summertime, and that's really a lot of time where it's prepping for the winter. And so there I am outside during the summer trying to get Dentilium ready for the winter because I don't want to be out there when it's really, really cold as well. And then Dentilium is kind of fragile in a way. So if you get too much, or if it gets like cold or anything like that, Dentilium can also break. It breaks really easy. I mean, I'm not gonna do it because this is a necklace that my son purchased for me, gave it to me, and I don't wanna, but you can break the shells very, very easy. And so it's kind of a delicate balance with Dentilium. But how I wanted to do it was also put in coral, natural coral. And finding natural coral nowadays, as I said, is really hard because people have over-harvested and things like that. And so I found this coral down in Arizona. We were down there for my husband's, one of their festivals at Gila River. We went down there and we went into this one shop, and this guy had hundreds and hundreds of beads, and he had a whole back area full of beads, and he's like, let me show you these. And I'm like, okay. And so I knew that I was doing this project this last summer, and I didn't have any coral at the time. And so this coral I purchased was natural, and it was from Arizona where I purchased it. It's not from Arizona, but I used that, and then I used some brass beads in it as well. And then on the top, I tied it off with some brain tan hide and everything like that. And usually on all of the medallions and stuff like that, I try to use brain tan hide because it lasts a lot longer and everything like that. Just checking my time. So, back in the day, Dentilium was kind of like elk teeth in the day. So the more you had, the more wealth you showed and things like that. And I mean that not in that's how rich you were, but that's like how much you had to trade. That's how high your skill level was, that you could trade that much at that time. And for like elk teeth, as I mentioned, elk teeth, the more you had, the more wealthy you were. And the reason that was because your partner, because your husband, because your man provided for you. And not only provided for you through the elk teeth, but also provided your meals, your hides, your water vessels. I mean, there's so much from elk that you can get, but if anybody knows about elk teeth, so elk produce 2 ivory teeth. And so imagine having, I don't have one, I've been asked to make a elk tooth dress for a couple people, one for myself, I'm making. And then another museum has asked me to make them an elk tooth dress, Dakota style. And so the more you have, the richer you work. So my husband goes out every year and gets us 2 elk. He goes to his mother's tribe, Crow Agency, Montana, and gets us elk every year, as well as buffalo. And so that's how our wealth is considered. It's not by a monetary way, but it's also by what you can provide and what you can have. Like I just had a niece, well, she's kind of a niece, call me the other day. Do you have any sage or sweetgrass? Sweetgrass. It was sweetgrass. And, during that, you're supposed to pick that during the summer. There's certain times where we have to do things. And so she didn't do it. And we always pick enough to have for ourselves and also to have for others, because people are always asking us for like medicines and stuff like that. And so we always pick enough to have for families afterwards, because that's just how we do. That's just how we do. And then here's some of my past work. This year, last year, everything like that. So that quilt medallion in the left-hand corner, that is our Sundance family, I don't want to say logo, but altar design is what it is. Oh, my picture's there entered wrong. Oh well, that's okay. So the Minnesota Timberwolves medallions, I've been doing a lot of those for the past, I don't know, 4 years, I guess. Giving them to different players and stuff like that. And so, gosh, I don't know how many I've made, honestly. I was asked to make 600. I can't make 600. I don't have the time. We figured it out because each one takes about a week to make, you know, with regular life and everything else. Each one takes about a week to make, and so we figured it out, and it would be like 11 and a half years. I don't have that much time and that much dedication to do for the Timberwolves, and so I had to say no on that deal. The Purple Heart Dentillium set, I made that for the We Win conference to sell. I do a lot of vendor events on the reservation. I usually don't go off the reservation. It's just a lot harder, and it's only me doing all of this, and so it's a matter of time when I have the time and stuff like that. And so you can see there that's dentillium as well. I love working with dentillium. It's a shell that's really, really cool and something that is very versatile in that you can work with, but it's also very delicate. And sometimes I love working with different mediums as well. And so sometimes you have to use wire on that. Sometimes you use fish line, but the problem with fish line or with like real thread is it busts really easy. So the shells can really cut it, they're that sharp. And so it's finding what medium works best to work with as well. And how did our ancestors do it? Well, I know how they did it, but I'm not as smart as them. I don't think, but I am. I mean, we all are. And then the skirt, I have done a lot of skirts in my time. This skirt I have on, the one Carissa has on, the one Tanya has on. My skirts are highly requested all over. That's one of my kind of fortes, I guess you could say. And then again, the left bottom is a dentillium necklace. Again, like I said, I love working with dentillium. I love working with check beads. That's what most of them are, is check beads. And then like the purple hearts, those are wampum. So trying to find a good source of wampum, and that's usually out on the East Coast. And then again, like I just did that, just did that star quilt tree skirt. That's gonna be my one and only one, because that took me a long time to do. But it turned out amazing. That's like my pride and joy. And that one's already gone. The fire color or sunrise colors as well, skirt. So that went to, I had a friend in Arizona who, from the Dene tribe, asked me to do one for Quanah Chasing Horse. So that one went to Quanah. And then I did these, the Ukrainian floral scarves. Those have been big as well because we traded with them as well, the scarves. And so they're called kukum scarves, or like grandma's scarves, unchi scarves, kunchi scarves. So I did those, made them infinity scarves. And then this Vikings medallion I did again for David, my son, because, you know, you gotta spoil family, and that's what I try to do. And that's my way of giving back to my family, is trying to spoil them in whatever way I can through my art. And so that's really about my art. I've been doing it for a long time. I'm just, you know, somebody who stays at home and, well, I used to work. But that's a long story. Tribal politics, y'all know that. You know? But yeah, now I stay at home and work on my art again. I am getting ready for the Wanietu Art Market, which is out at Mochikatati, December 12th to the 14th. I'll have dentillium there. I'll have some tree skirts, not as nice as that one, but I will have tree skirts there. I will have ribbon skirts there. And I'm gonna try to do like this yellow skirt and the one that I have on. These are called basket weave skirts. I'm gonna try to have some of those as well. But yeah, so my Mihasani, he says, tell them how many yards of ribbon you have. So in each skirt on the basket weave skirts, there's approximately 42 yards of ribbon. And so it's a lot of ribbon, it's a lot of time. Usually one skirt takes me all day. And that's just getting everything sewn down and getting everything in its place and stuff like that. And people who know me, like I'm a perfectionist. You know, you're not supposed to be when you're an artist, but I am. And sometimes it gets the better of me, but then also like some of our teachings are, you know, you're supposed to leave mistakes because we aren't perfect people. And that's really the truth, you know, we aren't perfect people. And so if I have a mistake, I end up leaving it because I know I'm not perfect by far. I make a lot of mistakes. So he says, say that again. Yeah, so it's just, you know, it's just something that my art has taken me places that I've never thought that I'd be going. I always just thought, oh, I'm just gonna be, you know, someone at home and someone who does things for my kids and my family. I'm not gonna go outside of the box. But I have gone outside of that box and it's taken me a lot farther than where I ever thought I would be. And so one thing, you know, for all of the younger people here and even middle-aged and older, it doesn't matter what age, you know, if you have something that you really, really like to do and something that you don't know what you're gonna do, just go with it. Go with your heart, go with your gut and do it and stick with it. And just keep trying and trying and trying and get out of your comfort zone, because I honestly never thought that I'd be at the Science Museum of Minnesota giving this talk and doing something that I really love to do, and that's being an artist. And I didn't consider myself an artist because it's like, you know, really, like, how do you find art through this? I don't know, but you do, I do. And just seeing that display case up front, so for those of you that haven't seen it, it's in the lobby. So as you're going out the doors, it'll be off to your left. And it's kind of a frosted, but if you push the button, it'll all light up. And it's thank you to me, Hassani, for always having the patience, because after every single project, it doesn't matter how big or small, I go up to him and I'm like, here, it's done, what do you think? And he's always giving me that, it looks good. And so, thank you for that. Thank you to my family for also having that confidence in me, and for being there, and for pushing me on some of these things, because if it wasn't for you guys, I wouldn't be doing the things that I've done. And so, thank you, and are there any questions?